Chapter 1063. The judge spoke and the lawyers returned to their seats. The people sitting below were all observers. Rao Rong stood there nonchalantly. But sometimes, even during the trial, the criminal might not admit to the crime. For example, Wang Chuanlei before the trial, he would think of a way to escape. Everyone involved in the case knew what was going on. Wang Chuanlei probably thought he could do it again based on his past experience. His lawyer had also prepared a lot of materials, but these materials were basically useless. After the trial, the lawyer avoided the main point when he was asked about the reply to the text. At most, it can only be said to be a leak. Without confirming the other party's identity, the crime can't be established. Besides, I doubt the other party's evidence collection is legitimate. Director Huang had expected such a defense. Over the years, there were too many people who were used to quibbling. The judge discussed with the people beside him before replying, "The crime squad doesn't have any other evidence." Yes. Rao Rong walked over, his gaze landing on Wang Chuanlei. A year ago, Wang Chuanlei won the honor of killing someone and used this honor to rise through the ranks. I can provide all the evidence. Ever since he had seen Rao Rong, Wang Chuanlei's expression had changed. He had indeed wanted to be wary of Rao Rong, but in his heart, he didn't think Rao Rong would amount to anything. Even if Rao Rong had something, it wouldn't be a threat to him. After all, he hadn't had the chance to show the evidence back then. Some people were still protecting him and they didn't believe in the evidence. Wang Chuanlei didn't know that it was because of his lowly life. Rao Rong was no longer the hot-blooded youngster who believed in everyone. Now he had stepped forward, all for the sake of getting justice back. This time, no one would be able to stop him. As they exchanged glances, Wang Chuanlei seemed to understand something. The hatred in Rao Rong's eyes made him lose his composure. The judge ordered for the evidence to be presented. Rao Rong's current situation was unique. Almost everyone knew that his father had been framed due to the previous exposure. It was just that there was no way to confirm who the person behind this was. We need to verify the evidence. That was because there wasn't any personal grudge involved. Even if everyone knew what was going on, they had to have enough evidence before they could be sentenced. The verification of evidence had to be done according to procedures. No one knew what would happen during this period of time. Just as the judge was about to announce that the case would be adjourned for a retrial tomorrow. "There's other evidence." Suddenly, a clear and distinct voice came from the door. It was a young man wearing a dark red t-shirt and matching earrings with shimmering black fragments. His handsome face was exposed to everyone's sight. Rao Rong's eyes widened when he saw the slight curve of his lips and the way he strode over with one hand on his belt. "Bojio." She sat up from the bed with a white bandage wrapped around her head. She looked like a beautiful, sickly man. Chapter 1064. It was just 5 words. Wang Chuanlei almost lost his footing. Everything else was fine. Other than Rao Rongqing, who else could prove that he hadn't killed anyone? When checking the evidence, he could take this time to clean up the loose ends. But drug trafficking. Everyone knew what this meant. Director Huang was undoubtedly the most excited among them. He turned around and looked at the tall man on his left. "I have to say, even though you two are quite annoying, you're still so useful at the crucial moment." Chinamo didn't speak, just glancing at him. On the other hand, Lawyer Bai pushed his spectacles up and walked down the stairs. He probably knew that the high school student who hired him would appear. However, he didn't expect it to be like this. His head was broken? Bojio noticed Lawyer Bai's gaze. How should she put it? There wasn't anything wrong with her head, she just had a slight concussion. She wanted to come out, but the Almighty was worried and personally wrapped a white bandage around her. At that time, the Almighty looked at her as if he was looking at a naughty child and even told her to sit still. What else could she say? As a domineering CEO, she had to give in to her little secretary, even if she had to go out to work. But she also protested, "It's just a concussion, there's no need to make it so eye-catching, right? Didn't the novels you read tell you that sometimes a concussion can cause amnesia? If the Almighty didn't have a sharp tongue, he wouldn't be the Almighty." The fact that he liked to dig up her dark history probably couldn't be changed. Now that she thought about it, she wanted to reply, "You're the one who lost your memory, not me." Lawyer Bai followed the young man's gaze and roughly understood what was going on. His lips curled into a smile as he walked towards the judge. "Since the beginning, the other party has been denying the evidence we have provided, but he has never said why he leaked the secret. Having such a loophole in a confidential meeting is itself a dereliction of duty. Moreover, more and more evidence shows that he not only leaked the secret, but also committed murder and drug trafficking. We will file a lawsuit. Please sentence him to death in accordance with the law." When the word death sentence came out of Lawyer Bai's mouth. Wang Chuanlei's legs gave way and his face turned extremely pale. More importantly, every piece of evidence presented by the USB drive pointed to the truth. Wang Chuanlei couldn't escape. Rao Rong's tightly clenched fists finally loosened after the judge's verdict. But at this moment, however, the other party's lawyer retorted and pointed out a point. Regardless of whether your father is a hero or not, no matter how wronged he is, you've joined a criminal organization. Even if you haven't committed any atrocities, Rao Rong should still be imprisoned. Hearing this, Bo Jiao tightened her grip. Lawyer Bai wanted to say something. Rao Rong removed his jacket, stretching his arms out. He was wearing a white shirt, his back straight. He did not say a word. However, she had tacitly agreed to the suggestion of sending him to prison. Director Huang wanted to step forward. Chinemo reached out to block him. Rao Rong lifted his lids, glancing at the handcuffs on his wrists. Suddenly he broke into a smile, clean and gentle, just like the youngster who had led a strong esports team, waved the mouse and won the honor. I don't regret it. When I come out again, Chinemo, I will be as innocent as you. He had chosen this method to avenge his father's death. Chapter 1065. In this world there was no turning back. Perhaps at the very beginning. If the people who had protected Wang Chuanlei had been able to distinguish right from wrong, they wouldn't have forced Rao Rong to choose such a method of farewell. But there was no maybe. It's all over, he thought. He could finally have a good sleep. Let go of the hatred and sleep. They brushed past each other. Rao Rong paused beside the youngster's feet, speaking in a voice only the two of them could hear. Thank you, Z. It wasn't Spade Z. It was Z. The intelligent Bo Jiao quickly realized that he had found out about her identity. After all, it was possible that the mission Fan Jia had given Rao Rong was to infiltrate the esports industry and target her. Rao Rong must have noticed something during their interaction. Bo Jiao didn't reply, she didn't admit or deny it. Rao Rong smiled. There's another case. Let me know the outcome once it's over. Perhaps only those who had experienced it would understand empathy. Rao Rong paid attention to that case. It was because he knew that there was a group of people who couldn't tell right from wrong that were protecting a criminal. He knew that someone would become the second him. He knew very well what it was like to feel that way. The evidence was in his hands, but there was no way to sue heaven. He was young and could handle it. How could that mother endure such heart-wrenching pain? Bo Jiao glanced up. Just as he was about to disappear, she said, "Don't worry." Okay, clang. The metal door slammed shut. They glanced at each other. Without hesitation they walked to the next door. Lawyer Bai was with them so they could speak. This case was difficult because the system wasn't perfect. Fortunately, there was enough evidence. But even so, the opposing party's lawyer still asked a very shameless question on the spot. Before saying that someone else stole it, can the original author guarantee that he didn't steal it? After all, there are many works of the same genre. It's not valid to say that the author plagiarized the work. That's right, it doesn't make sense. So what if my almighty plagiarized it? It's better than the original author. I like his writing. You sure are troublesome. You just won't let go of almighty Wu Men. You're bullying my almighty. Probably for money. When the judge heard this, he frowned and looked at the mother. The lawyer took advantage of these voices. Also, my client wasn't as popular as the other party in the beginning. Is the other party trying to use his popularity to bully my client? Bo Jiao knew that no matter how uncultured her mother was, she could still understand what others were saying and understood the situation. When she looked up, her eyes met the man's lips, which were about to break. Bo Jiao stuffed a hand into her pocket. Suddenly, she picked up the mop beside her and swung it towards the handle of the row of seats. The girls who were still talking froze. Bo Jiao waved her left hand and knocked on it. There wasn't a hint of a smile in her eyes. Continue, I'm listening. Director Huang had tagged along. When he saw this scene, he shot Chinemo a look. It seemed to be saying, don't go too far with the person you're in charge of. This is a court. What if someone catches you? But reality proved that Bo Jiao had a sense of propriety, her voice rising once more. Lawyer Bai, explain to them in detail what plagiarism is. Chapter 1066. Plagiarism is the act of stealing or modifying someone else's work, using the same method to copy the work completely or partially, or altering the form or content to a certain extent. Lawyer Bai walked forward. Firstly, the other party's defense is intentionally distorting the main body of the argument, using plagiarism as a joke. Under normal circumstances, plagiarism isn't determined based on the subject matter. There are many similar books like fantasy, CO, level up, esports, entertainment, etc. There might even be similarities due to the description, which is normal. But what isn't normal is when there is a plot unique to the original author. The other party's action is to use the original plot or add words to make it their own. This isn't a joke, it's a copy. Lawyer Bai spoke slowly, reading the sentence clearly. Also, the most important aspect of a work is the soul of the character, which is what we call the main character. It's simple, take the rebirth as an example. There isn't anything wrong with writing about a high school student, but our main character wears earrings, skateboards, likes to climb walls, and gets beaten up for being a gay. There are a bunch of overbearing CEO books on the bookshelf, which the main character uses as a black mark. This is an original plot, but why is it the same for your side? There are also other major plots that are copied and written in the hands of your excellency. Lawyer Bai paused for a moment before continuing. As for what you said about plagiarizing or not, it's your business if you don't care. After all, not everyone has a conscience. My point of view is that we can forgive unintentional mistakes, but we will never forgive those who plagiarize and then accuse the original. There's no point in pretending to be weak. What matters here is the truth, not acting. Sometimes, having a good voice was a good thing. Besides, every lawyer would clearly convey the message they wanted to convey. Some of them weren't convinced and wanted to speak up. The judge looked at the evidence, comparing it against every frame. Bojio stood at the side of the loudest, reminding Lawyer Bai, "You forgot the most important point." Lawyer Bai followed the young man's gaze, his gaze landing on the mother who was forcing herself to stand up straight. According to our country's constitution, compensation is the rightful amount of compensation. Perhaps you've never heard of it, but during the trial, my guardian mentioned the amount of compensation, 1 renminbi. A beggar wouldn't even ask for such a small amount of money. After traveling for 36 days from the county to the provincial city, from the provincial city to here, I've put in so much effort. From start to end, all I want is justice. Of course, even if my guardian succeeds, you'll still say that you like both books and don't care how it came about. But remember, you'll always be an accomplice. Even Director Huang was stunned by what he heard. He turned towards Bojio. I finally witnessed the power of words. It's expensive after all. Bojio glanced at the time on her phone. Lawyer Bai really charged by the second, but the money spent was worth it since it would be able to control the situation. As Lawyer Bai's closing argument, he had said everything he needed to say. The three judges glanced at each other. Chapter 1067. These 5 minutes weren't peaceful at all. It wasn't easy to get a fair treatment for such a case in China. Besides, there were so many people protecting the other party. The funniest thing was that the defendant didn't even attend the hearing, only her representative appeared. This meant that all the pressure from the public was on the mother. She seemed especially calm at this moment. After 5 minutes, the hearing resumed. Her hands weren't as tense as before. She stood there innocently waiting for an answer. The judge announced, "The defendant is guilty of plagiarism." The mother didn't laugh, instead she reached out to cover her mouth. She wanted to cry, but she suppressed her emotions. She looked at her bracelet. "Daughter, did you hear that? Everything that should be returned to you has been returned to you." There would still be people who wouldn't accept the verdict and would complain. But at this moment it didn't seem to matter. Perhaps, those who couldn't tell right from wrong would never understand that they weren't being kind, they were being cruel. But that wasn't important anymore. Bojio watched as the mother's shoulders trembled and she started to cry uncontrollably. She stood there, not leaving. She placed the mop in her hands back to its original position. She didn't even bother to look at them. The entire case was announced in the newspaper. Although the details weren't revealed, the outcome was clear. Bojio stood outside for a while. She wanted to smoke. But when she reached into her pocket, she realized that she had promised the Almighty to quit smoking. She removed the candy wrapper and placed it in her mouth. The matter here was settled. It was time to plan in detail how she was going to kidnap the Almighty. Chinamo had expected to see a cold and listless fox. After all, the youngster's expression had started to show some emotions. He didn't expect to see the youngster rubbing his palms together when he turned around to see the youngster rubbing his fists in anticipation after telling him how to deal with the aftermath. "What are you up to again?" Chinamo walked over, pulling her towards him as he glanced at her head. Bojio felt that she didn't look good with such a curse on her. But she didn't want to lie, so she decided to compromise. "I'm thinking about the filming in America. I wonder how long it will take. You can ask about the schedule." Chinamo touched the bandage on the youngster's head and casually changed the topic. "Let's go back to sleep." Bojio had slept for a long time and was still energetic. "I just woke up. Do you want to play ball?" "I'm sleepy." Chinamo held her hand and walked forward as though there was no one else around. The The two of them were still as compatible as ever. Bojio enjoyed watching the Almighty sleep. Who wouldn't like to watch him sleep? Besides, the Almighty was so domineering that he could only fall asleep hugging her as a pillow. He wouldn't allow her to run around. At noon, Bojio closed her eyes along with the Almighty. Later on, she also wanted to be more honest. As a result, the princess was always walking back and forth in front of her like a cat, snorting from time to time. Bojio suppressed the provocation with her brute force and pulled Princess out. It was commonly known as cat walking. Dusk was approaching. Many people in the courtyard were walking their dogs. Walking the cat? The princess' big flat cat face exploded. Chapter 1068. Bojio was slightly surprised when she received Lin Feng's call. Senior, what's wrong? There's something that I need to discuss with you. For some reason, Lin Feng's tone sounded very different from other times. Bojio's fingers stilled. She held on to Princess, her voice calm. Speak. In less than half a month, Xuanhu will be leaving the country. He's talking to Feng Yi now. I think he's leaving the team. Lin Feng took a puff of his cigarette. Bojio wasn't sure where he was now. Actually, when Lin Feng had heard the news, he had wanted to discuss something with Feng Yi. He hadn't expected the office door to be left open, allowing him to hear everything. He has quite a number of fans. If he leaves the team just like that, there will definitely be a lot of people who won't understand. Lin Feng leaned against the wall, looking at his fingers. Even if they understand, no one will be able to accept it. Rather than letting the media spread the news, why don't we tell everyone? Bojio paused, returning to the previous question. Leaving the team? That's right, after he goes overseas, he definitely won't be able to undergo the same intensive training as before. Besides, he has always wanted to do research. Lin Feng's voice was calm. I was the one who pulled him into the esports team. Bojio could sense Lin Feng's bad mood. She carried Princess up with one hand and poked him casually, the other holding onto her phone. How do you intend to tell everyone? As a cat of noble birth, Princess's big face was obviously helpless. His claws couldn't reach the youngster, everything was useless. Lin Feng smiled. We can hold a farewell party and invite his fans. You can dress as a girl. Bojio took a moment before giving a direct answer. Even though Lin Feng was feeling down, he couldn't bring himself to feel depressed. The corners of his mouth twitched. F***ck, don't we still have the Asian Cup? It's less than a month, isn't it? In her heart, Supreme Alliance wouldn't be Supreme Alliance without anyone. Lin Feng tossed the cigarette into the bin and straightened his back. Feng Yi has discussed this with the organizers. With Supreme Alliance's current power, they aren't able to defend against external enemies. The Asian Cup concerns China's reputation and captain's condition is unknown. With Yunhu's withdrawal, we won't be able to win against the other Asian teams, much less the Japanese. Hence, he suggested for Xianhuan to participate in the Asian Cup. The organizers have already given a reply. Both teams are to prepare and we will see which team is stronger. He was already prepared to not participate in the competition. Bojio had an idea. At the same time, she understood that it wasn't appropriate for Supreme Alliance to continue fighting. Just as Lin Feng had said, Supreme Alliance had two generals that couldn't participate. The Asian Cup wasn't a domestic competition. Under such circumstances, sending Xianhuan out was the wisest choice. Feng Yi wouldn't have made this decision on his own. He must have asked the Almighty. Bojio lowered her lids. Every player's greatest wish was to fight for their country. It was just that everyone knew that the National League was probably the last battle. After this, no one knew how long it would take for Supreme Alliance to rise again. Chapter 1069. Yes, even if he had to leave openly. Rather than letting others speculate about him in the future, it would be better to bid farewell to everyone. I still have 3 days left. 3 days later, Brother Mo and I will head overseas to treat his hand. Bojio had always been a person of action. Let's think about how to organize the farewell party? Lin Feng blew his hair. That's simple, we can perform something. Piano? Bojio suggested. Lin Feng arched a brow. Little Spade, let's do something normal. Piano isn't normal? Bojio couldn't understand Senior Lin Feng's thoughts. Lin Feng replied, the venue will be cold, don't forget there will be fans. Alright, how do we contact the fans? Bojio asked. At this point, Lin Feng had an idea that he hadn't realized. Why don't we look for a fan meeting? Your official fan club president and my fan club president will be together. Then we'll ask Captain and Yunhu out. It would be better to discuss with them during this farewell meeting. Indeed. They had to be mentally prepared to leave the team. Lin Feng, on the other hand, wasn't naive. After you hang up, use your Weibo to contact your people. My Weibo is fake. Bojio pulled Princess back. Lin Feng spoke in a Beijing accent. You don't have to worry about that. Other fans might mistake you for someone else, but your official fan club leader wouldn't mistake you for someone else. When are you free today? Find a chance to meet her. We're only inviting local fans this time, so there won't be a lot of them. As for the program, aren't you the school hunk? Bojio replied faintly. Even if you want to sing, we have to sing together. Me? You want me to sing? Lin Feng wasn't bothered. If you have the courage to listen, I have the courage to sing. Bojio was still inexperienced and didn't understand that some people were so good at singing that they couldn't be taught. When she realized the problem, it was already too late. The more Lin Feng spoke, the more excited he became. Speaking of which, this is my first time meeting someone. As someone with experience, Bojio replied calmly, it's nothing, Brother Mo and I only got to know each other after we met. How can I be compared to you? I have the burden of being an idol. I'll go and contact someone first. Come out at 5 o'clock. Is there a problem? Lin Feng put away his bad mood. Bojio thought for a moment. She glanced up and scanned the walls of the Qin family's house. It wasn't easy for her to climb in, but no one would care if she climbed out. Sure. That's settled then. Where shall we meet? He had to tell them the location of the meeting. 5 p.m.? Bojio took a moment. Uda, you don't have to queue at that time. The atmosphere wouldn't be awkward if they talked while eating. In some ways she was really witty. But there was one thing. Contacting fans on Weibo had to be low-key. According to Lin Feng's intentions, he didn't want everyone to know first. With that in mind, she decided to walk the cat for another round and use this time to contact someone. Princess's heart was really tired. With a big round face, she was resolutely staring at a Samoyed. Meow, why are they all taller than me? The old men who were walking their dogs also thought it was interesting that the young man was walking with the cat in the yard. Chapter 1070. At this moment, Bojio noticed the gazes of the old men. She decided to keep a low profile. She carried Princess and sat on the steps. Brother, let's discuss something. Who's your brother? Aren't you embarrassed to call me brother? Where's your bottom line? Meow. I can't accept it. Princess raised his big face and paced back and forth. He felt that walking in circles wasn't bad. All the tall men left in fear when they saw him. Not bad, not bad. Bojio couldn't understand why a cat would be so proud. She watched as he challenged Samoyed valiantly with his claws extended. Samoyed didn't even look at him. He ignored him and lowered his head to sniff the bushes. Helpless, the princess even turned her head around and raised her face high. She looked as if she had been scared away by this young master. Bojio felt that it was better to go through Weibo. After all, it was tiring to watch a cat's inner drama. Bojio logged into her account and password. Due to the overwhelming number of messages, her phone was stuck. Fortunately, the official fan account was easy to find. She just didn't know if the person on Weibo was there at this time. After all, she couldn't use WeChat all the time. Bojio moved her fingers and sent a question mark over. She thought she would have to wait for a while. Unexpectedly, there was an instant reply. It's a living adult. Since it's so lively, it shouldn't be a tortoise, Bojio replied. The person on the other end was obviously agitated. Sir, I'm her secretary. The general manager is out. Tell her to meet me at 5 in the afternoon at Huda. The other presidents of the fan club will be there too. If she isn't free, she can leave me a message. Bojio sucked on a lollipop. After she was done typing, she leaned back with one arm and sat lazily. She freed one hand and caressed Princess's chin. Brother, come, let's continue our conversation. Help me set up a cover at 5 o'clock. Princess wouldn't agree to it. He started his inner drama again. Her Weibo chimed. Bojio retracted her hand. There were only 3 words. I'll be there. Okay. After she was done, Bojio stood up, stuffing a hand into her pocket. Before she entered, she didn't forget to size up the walls and balcony. The princess narrowed her eyes and extended her claws again. What do you want? Why are you so interested in my nest? The princess nests on the balcony. Bojio lowered her lids and headed up to the 2nd floor alone. The Almighty was still asleep. Soft light shone in, creating a halo of light. His messy black hair only made him look more elegant and noble. That was all the beauty in the world could do. Bojio walked over and found a spot that belonged to her. She turned sideways and wanted to lie down. At this moment, his wrist was suddenly grabbed by someone. Even his head was pressed against his chest, filled with the scent of peppermint and sandalwood. I heard from the guys in the military that you're a good cat walker. Bojio's gaze shifted, landing on the blinking phone screen. I didn't expect Brother Emo to have such a wide circle of friends. We're from the same compound, it's only natural that we know each other. Chin Emo didn't open his eyes. He was probably still sleepy. But at this moment, his voice was hoarse and deep. He told me that your little friend is very interesting. He's walking the cat behind us. He's an old general. Chapter 1071. Chin Emo didn't receive a reply. When he opened his eyes, he saw the youngster's slightly depressed expression. It was a pretty face. What? Can't you treat me as a little kid? Chin Emo asked as he touched her head, probably to check if the bandage was still there. Bojio had forgotten about it. She would have to remove the bandage before heading out. It's sad to be treated as a kid even though you're already an adult. I thought the main point of my sentence was my home. With that, he closed his eyes. Sleep for a while more. My home? Bojio suppressed the urge to kiss him. She listened to the Almighty's heartbeat and replied, sleep. Chin Emo really needed to rest. That was why he went back to sleep after that. Bojio waited for almost half an hour before standing up. The Almighty had indeed been watching her. It wasn't an illusion. The people outside the Chin family's house seemed to be following her wherever she went. But it wasn't impossible for her to shake them off. It was a good opportunity to spar with them and test their skills. It would be easy to kidnap the Almighty. Bojio pondered as she walked into the bathroom. It was 2:30 p.m. The courtyard was quite a distance from Hu University. No matter what, he had to change his clothes. This was a sign of respect for gay activities. But after searching for half a day, she could only wear a dark red t-shirt. She added a thin hooded jacket. The jacket wasn't really meant to be worn. She wore a black watch band on her fair wrist, its surface reflecting light as she moved. She bit the pen cap and wrote a note to the Almighty stating the reason. Once everything was arranged, she went downstairs. There were people at the 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock directions. Bojio arched a brow. She walked to the wall and placed Princess under the shade. She smiled and escaped. The jacket was held up by the tree branches. From other directions, only the corner of the jacket could be seen. It seemed as though Bojio was squatting and playing with the cat. In reality, the youngster had already kicked with her long legs. Using the force, she reached out and leaped onto the wall handsomely, landing swiftly and cleanly. The dark red t-shirt matched with the youngster's bright smile. It was both handsome and devilish. However, it was a little awkward. When she looked up, she saw the two old men looking at her and shaking their heads. The little kid that Chin Emo brought back is mischievous again. It's normal for children to climb over walls. Those eyes were filled with love. Bojio coughed and was about to speak. Little friend, go ahead. There are so many people looking at you. I don't know what that cold brat is thinking. Just don't go and not come back. I'll be back once I'm done. Thank you, grandpas. He waved his hand, implying that he did not mind. After that, the two old men continued to focus their attention on the chessboard. They were indeed like generals. The first thing Bojio did when she left the courtyard was to contact Lin Feng. How is it? I'm already here, why aren't you here yet? Lin Feng's voice was lazy. Hurry up, it's hot outside. Bojio didn't understand. If it's hot, enter the shop first. Not entering. Lin Feng was still a little awkward. It's my first time meeting a gay man and it's all girls there. It'll be so awkward if I go to the table. When you come, we can go in together. Bojio. Why are you looking for a girlfriend when you're so shy? You should just stick with Almighty Yun. Chapter 1072. Lin Feng, who was walking in and out of Huda, was dressed to the nines. He was wearing a mask and a hat, and the only thing that could be seen was his eyes. Those who didn't know better would think that he was using a secret signal to communicate with others. But he had to. Supreme Alliance was at its peak right now. Popular players like Bojio, Lin Feng, and Yun who were easily recognized when they went out. But when he saw Bojio, Lin Feng felt depressed. Why did he look like a lunatic when he dressed up? She was wearing a black mask and a dark red t-shirt, which made her look even more handsome. She was completely different from him. Let's go in, Bojio said, pushing the door open. At this point, Lin Feng felt that he had lost again. He tidied up his appearance and strode in as well. The base meeting was on the same day. The people invited were all the president of the fan club. In reality, there weren't many people. But there was one girl who took the high-speed train from Lin City. They were really excited since they had never met their Almighty in such a manner. Just as the girls were having a friendly conversation, one of them glanced up and caught sight of the youngster walking over. The youngster was wearing a black mask and a matching earring, which made his eyes seem deep. He was still holding his phone in his hand, and he looked natural and handsome as he walked over. After seeing his silver-gray hair, the girls were already a little stunned by his handsomeness. Bojio was carefree, sitting down when she saw a seat. She reached out and flipped the menu. "Everyone is here, what do you want to eat?" They were surprised that they had entered the ordering phase so quickly. The girls felt as though they were still in a dream. But the person in front of them was indeed Big Spade. "Almighty Lin isn't here yet," one of the girls said softly. Bojio reached out and removed the black mask. She supported the side of her face with one hand and tilted her head, smiling. "He's here, but he needs to prepare himself mentally." The girl was originally the president of Uncle Yin's fan club. When she saw the youngster's smile, she froze. All the girls felt that Big Spade's face was too lethal after removing his mask. He was so handsome that they couldn't concentrate. In addition, everyone was very excited at this time. They couldn't suppress the smiles on their faces, and their hearts were beating faster. Lin Feng felt the same way. After all, he had never met his fans in this way before. But they still had to meet. Therefore, Lin Feng, who pretended to be cool, followed closely behind. Only then did everyone arrive. Bojio started ordering. Since the girls weren't looking at the menu anymore, they were all staring at the two of them. When they got excited, they would grab the hands of the people around them. They were all here to see their almighty. Now that their wishes had come true, of course they were happy. The dishes Bojio ordered were all meat, but since there was a girl around, she ordered 2 more plates of vegetables and a fruit salad. The girls couldn't control their wildly beating hearts. Someone asked Bojio, "Can Big Spade take a photo?" Bojio glanced over but didn't reply. That person immediately explained. His voice was filled with unconcealable joy. "We won't take pictures of our faces. We'll just take pictures of our hands together to tell everyone that we're meeting up." Chapter 1073. Sure. Lin Feng placed his hand on her shoulder. He was rather forthright now. Bojio didn't object, smiling faintly as she nodded. The person in charge of taking photos used a selfie stick. After raising the mobile phone, everyone stretched out 2 fingers and put them together. After piecing them together, it was a very tall and beautiful picture. That person took a glance, thinking that Big Spade's hands with the black ring would definitely go crazy if it was released. That was the truth. Initially, the person had uploaded the photo with the intention of showing off the delicacies. Who would have known that every fan club president would have such a change? After adding one, the photo went viral immediately. "Gay meetup? Who is it?" "I heard it's with Big Spade and Almighty Lin. It's a pity I'm not from here, it's too far." "Ah, gay meetup." There were some who reacted slowly. After seeing the photo, they started to search for clues. Big Spade and Almighty Lin are among them? Look at the hands, don't you think 2 of the fingers are too outstanding? It was indeed outstanding, the black ring was eye-catching. "If this isn't my Big Spade's hand, I'll swallow my keyboard. Oh, I'm going crazy, I'm so envious of the people who can attend the meetup. I heard from my good friend they're eating now, they'll be going to KTV later. I wanted to block out her moments, but now I can't wait to understand the entire process. It would be nice to listen to the live broadcast." The official fan clubs at S and comments never stopped. On this day, everyone was restless. The girls who came to attend the meetup were even more excited until Lin Feng mentioned the farewell party. The atmosphere suddenly fell into a stillness. It was as though a party had just ended and everyone was still yearning for more. Then it was announced that everything had ended and there wouldn't be a next time. Perhaps it was even heavier than that. Because everyone knew in their hearts. Regardless of who was missing, Supreme Alliance would never be the same again. Besides, it was Yunhu who was leaving. Other than Yunhu, Almighty Qin would be heading overseas to recuperate and Spade would be following him. Which meant that Supreme Alliance would lose 3 members. They would be torn apart. That was everyone's first thought. It wasn't a good feeling. Especially for them esports fans. Some of the fan leaders were already very old. When they liked Supreme Alliance, they hadn't dated yet. That was when they were still in university. It was the first time they understood the world. No matter what, as long as you worked hard, you could change the outcome. When they first met Supreme Alliance, it was at its peak. At that time, Almighty Qin held a gun and entered the territory alone. No one dared to get close to him. At that time, Linda and Yundo were still rookies with strong personalities. Although his playstyle wasn't that skillful, it gave people unlimited expectations. Later on, Supreme Alliance hit a low point, but it had never been so miserable. If there was anything that was the most unbearable, that was their helplessness at that time. However, it was still this group of people who had leapt up step by step from the lowest point. They were the true kings who had returned, their sharpness unstoppable. Just when they thought that they could continue to accompany them like this, everything was over. They knew very well that the lifespan of esports players wasn't too long. After all, hand speed and age mattered. Chapter 1074. When is Almighty Yun leaving? After a long while, someone asked. Lin Feng had expected such an atmosphere, but now that it was like this, he felt even worse. Half a month later. If he doesn't report, it will affect him too. Brother Mo and I will be flying in 3 days. Bo Jio placed the cola in her hand down. I wanted to ask how many locals or nearby people you can gather for the next 2 days so that everyone can come over to play and bid farewell. No one spoke. The lively atmosphere wouldn't come back. The president of the Feng Yun fan club tilted her head, her voice hoarse. I'll try my best. The person beside her patted her shoulder. At this moment, everyone felt the same. But at the same time, they understood that if you really liked someone, you should let him live his life according to his wishes. You shouldn't use your liking to make him stay. After the discussion was over, the end of the base meetup was brought forward. Under such circumstances, no one seemed to be in the mood to get high. The one who felt the worst was the president who had followed Yunhu all the way. When she boarded the train, she didn't know why, but her throat felt uncomfortable. Actually, everyone knew. This might be the last time they would see their idol. It wasn't in real life. But in the future, there wouldn't be a shadow of that person in every competition. Even Supreme Alliance would gradually disappear from everyone's sight. If you had really liked a person or a group of people, you would understand how it felt. Hence, the painstaking organization sent a message to everyone who was here. They even said that they wanted everyone to come. They couldn't tell them the reason. But they knew that if they didn't come this time, it would be a lifelong regret. After Lin Feng and Bo Jio sent them to the car, they found a place and lit up a cigarette. *CK, I felt terrible when I saw her like that. Lin Feng caressed his hair, leaning against the wall, his eyes looking up at the sky. It would be great if I could play games for the rest of my life. But people have to grow up, right? For example, when you were young, you realized that this person was the most suitable person for you. When you come into contact with more outstanding people, you will realize that there is actually someone more suitable for you. Bo Jio tilted her head and paused. She threw the cigarette into the bin and wore her mask. She stuffed one hand into her pocket. No, it's because of that person. That person has appeared before. No matter how outstanding the people I will meet in the future, they won't be able to compare to him. That's right. She paused for a moment before continuing. What happened between you and Almighty Yun? Lin Feng lowered his eyes and took 2 puffs of his cigarette. He smiled and said, What can happen between us? It's just that my best friend suddenly left the country. I'm not used to it. Bo Jio wanted to see Lin Feng's expression, but all she could see was his handsome face, which was covered by his hair. She couldn't see anything. However, he vaguely felt that something was different. It was hard to describe. Chapter 1075. When Coco received the call, he was still in the midst of a live stream. When he heard the news, he switched off the channel. What did you say? Lin Feng is going to sing? He bit the bunny's ear. I don't want to participate, I strongly reject. Rejection is invalid, it's a group activity. We'll be near the club at midnight, come over with Feng Shang. Even though that was what Bo Jio said, she was still a little doubtful after the call ended. She glanced at Lin Feng. How bad is your singing for Coco to reject you? Lin Feng held her arm. Let me tell you, it's a long story. You'll see how good I am in a while. Bo Jio. Was singing badly a form of pride now? When they reached the KTV, Bo Jio realized that it wasn't because of his singing. Every line Lin Feng sang wasn't in tune. He should have been in tune, but for some reason he went up, making it difficult for Coco to find the tune again. Bo Jio finally understood what it meant to be in tune. To a listener, it was a form of destruction. How could he perform for the fans with such a standard? Bo Jio reached out and rubbed her temples. She thought for a moment and stopped playing the guitar. This won't do. Lin Feng arched a brow. Why do I find it nice? Look at what I sang just now, there's finally a tune. There are so many lines, but you only managed to tune one line. Bo Jio brought the guitar over with a smile. How did you do it? Lin Feng didn't speak. He had a feeling that if he spoke another word, Little Spade would smack him with his guitar. Coco placed his earplugs down and jumped over with the bunny in his arms. He was exhilarated. What did I say, Little Spade? You can't let this guy sing, there are so many twists and turns. Bo Jio glanced at them. How's your coordination? Black belt in Taekwondo. Lin Feng was best at martial arts with his legs. Bo Jio sized him up. Since you can't sing, you can dance. After you dance, you can even move your lips. Lin Feng. What the hell? What songs do youngsters like these days? Bo Jio scrolled back and forth in the KTV song selection area. Coco and Feng Shang looked at each other. You're the youngest here. Bo Jio paused for a moment before smiling. That seems to be the case. Most of the Supreme Alliance's fans were similar to her. There were many students. It was a parting occasion, so there was no need to be so unhappy. Bo Jio slid open the chart and listened to the top 3 songs. In the end, she settled on the middle song. This one. Coco, Lin Feng, and even Feng Shang froze at that moment. Their expressions were hard to describe. This song? Yes, this one. Bo Jio made the final decision. The other 3 looked like they had nothing left to live for. It was all thanks to Weibo this time. When Bo Jio returned to the Qin family, it was still peaceful. But it was only peaceful. Bo Jio walked into the house. Auntie Zhang, who came out with a cup of tea, pointed behind her with her chin and said in a low voice, "The young master is in the study." In this situation, Bo Jio could only turn and walk towards the study. In the study. Qin Mo was nearing the end of the call. On the other end, Magician insisted on an answer. "Boss, who exactly is this young Master Fu? He saved the entire ship single-handedly and knows how to make use of the surroundings to minimize the impact of the explosion. Who exactly is he? Do you really like him? Or are you attracted to his capabilities and want to recruit him?" Someone could vaguely be heard saying, "Is there something wrong with your brain?" Boss's attitude clearly says that he likes her. I didn't expect the boss to be gay. If I had known earlier, I would have been more careful when I showered in the platoon. No, that's not right. If I had known the boss was gay, I would have been in a favorable position. Anyway, the boss is so handsome. No matter how I think about it, it's not a loss. Qin Mo allowed them to make a ruckus. In the end, he asked faintly, "Are you done?" 4 words. It was a solemn silence. You just have to remember to protect her family. As for other things, don't say anything. Even if Huang Guohua asks, there are some things I have to investigate. Alright, I'm hanging up, someone is coming in. Indeed, someone was coming. It was Bo Jio. She was feeling a little guilty, but even so, she maintained her lazy attitude. "Brother Emoti." She looked so obedient. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster and placed his phone on the table. He leaned back, his left hand still wrapped in bandages. Since when did the wall-hopping student rely on a cat to divert her attention? The almighty sharp tongue was so artistic. How was she supposed to respond? "What are you and Lin Feng doing?" Qin Mo tapped the screen, probably because he had seen the message. Bo Jio sat down, her gaze deep. She still looked like a rich young master even though her sitting posture wasn't proper. "We want to hold a farewell party." After hearing these 3 words, Qin Mo could almost guess the cause and effect. After a while, he opened his mouth. "Which day?" Bo Jio replied, "Tomorrow." MMH. Bo Jio assumed that was the end of the matter. But the next second, Qin Mo spoke again. "Next time if you want to go out, go through the front door. It won't be good if the grandpas in the courtyard see you when you climb the wall. What do you think?" Bo Jio paused, feeling depressed again. Didn't he promise not to tell Brother Mo? She didn't expect him to be so passionate about gossip no matter how old he was. "Come here." Qin Mo looked at the youngster's expression and smiled. Bo Jio arched a brow. She placed both hands on the table and leaned over. Qin Mo moved slightly and reached out, pressing the back of the youngster's head. It was a sweet kiss. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. The lights, the starry sky, and the reflection from the window landed in the study room. Everything seemed incomparably peaceful. It seemed that other than the sound of a heartbeat, nothing else could be heard. Even Madame Zhang, who was secretly observing, didn't enter again. The night grew darker. Even though both of them were in the Qin family's house. But they did live in 2 rooms. Ever since Bo Jio moved in, Qin Mo seemed to have an extra job, which was to tell a certain someone a bedtime story. Qin Mo had always thought that this kind of thing was only enjoyed by children. But it was obvious that the person sleeping on the bed wasn't very mature mentally. Qin Mo reached out and pushed the silver hair in front of the youngster's forehead away. His gaze deepened. Then he walked out of the room and went to the courtyard. Very soon, a military vehicle drove over from the other side. There was a swoosh. A person came down from the car. That person was wearing glasses. Although he was wearing a white coat, there was no way to link such a devilish-looking man with the word doctor. "Boss, you asked me to come at this time. It's really strange. People who don't know might think that we have some unspeakable secret." Qin Mo glanced at him. He stuffed one hand into his pocket and stood tall. "If you want me to get in the car, leave some space for me." The psychiatrist sized him up. In the end, he couldn't see anything from that noble and handsome face. He sat back and took out a fountain pen and a pile of notes on his lap. Today just as he was about to speak, Chinamo interrupted him. That's right, it's very important, so I won't tell you anything about her. You don't have to think of ways to make me fall asleep. After all, this is a little difficult for you. The psychiatrist gritted his teeth and kept the pen. Honestly, he really wanted to resign and coach the new recruits in the army. Why did he have to come to his young master to suffer? Then tell me what you want to tell me. The psychiatrist had already given up. But he didn't completely give up. After all, no matter what was said, it could reflect a person's psychological state. But the answer he got was definitely a rejection. All these years, his boss's reaction was basically the same every time. Chinamo crossed his slender legs slightly. It was obvious that he was used to this. Sometimes, the psychiatrist would come to do psychological tests for him. I do have something that I want to hear your analysis of. The psychiatrist was about to write the word, no. But after hearing Chinmo's words, he suddenly straightened his body and almost dropped the fountain pen in his hand. Chinamo glanced at him and reminded him faintly, be professional, don't let me see your shock. The psychiatrist tried his best to control his micro-expressions, but his voice still sounded a little excited. What is it? It's about the thoughts of a high school student. The psychiatrist guessed for a long time but didn't expect such an answer. Was he kidding? This wasn't what he wanted to hear, okay? If a high school student still likes to listen to bedtime stories, why is that? Chinmo's side profile didn't change at all. The psychiatrist spread his hands. Isn't it easy to analyze? She can't forget her childhood and lacks a sense of security. This kind of person is a little complicated. It's not that she doesn't know anything, but she knows everything, but she has a pure land in her heart that she wants to keep. And it's very likely that her pure land is her childhood. In other words, the words childhood sweetheart are very important to her. Of course. The psychiatrist thought that this inference was very simple. Chinamo didn't say anything else. He just looked out of the window. His deep eyes seemed to have deepened. His fringe fell, blocking his expression. He had already done this analysis. However, when this kind of analysis was said by someone else, he still subconsciously reached out and pulled open his collar. Just like that, he sat in the car seat, his posture a bit more unruly than usual, but the corners of his mouth hid all traces of a smile. That was why she kept wanting to leave. This time she went overseas with the intention of never coming back. Chapter 1076. There's one more thing. Chinamo glanced over. The psychiatrist adjusted his white coat and said righteously, Boss, do I look like someone who specializes in dealing with teenage psychological problems? This time it's me, Chinamo replied calmly. The psychiatrist lifted his eyes, his interest piqued. What? I don't know why images keep appearing in my head recently. Chinamo looked at him, his tone slow. Could it be because I like someone too much, causing me to think of the person when they were young? The psychiatrist's hand that was holding the pen paused, but he didn't show it. He flipped open the notebook, writing as he said, From a psychological perspective, if you like someone too much, you would indeed think of the person in all sorts of situations. There might even be things that you haven't done, but you would feel as though you have experienced them. Boss, you study psychology too, you should be clear about this. In reality, it wasn't just the person he liked. Many people would have the same feeling as though they had thought of it before. Chinamo retracted his gaze and pulled the car door to the left. With a swoosh, the car door opened. Just as the psychiatrist was about to ask more questions, Chinamo had already alighted. The psychiatrist was helpless. He glanced at the incomplete form in front of him. It really wasn't suitable to hand it over to the higher-ups. But, if it was really like what Boss had said, would it mean that Boss would regain his lost memories? But regardless of whether it was the general or madam, they didn't want that memory to reappear. After all, no one would be able to forget that scene. Boss, who was covered in wounds, seemed to have lost his soul. It wasn't until he recovered from his illness and had a fever for 3 whole days that he lost some of his memories, that he returned to his current state. Selective amnesia. He must have suffered greatly for this to happen. Before they found out why Boss would feel pain, they wouldn't allow certain memories to trigger young master. After all, no one could guarantee what would happen. Since it was so painful, then they wouldn't do it. This was the decision they had made at that time. After all, if Boss had had a complete memory, he would have been accused of being hypnotized by a terrorist organization and would have faced a more serious interrogation. No one would have expected Boss to have selective amnesia. Just like when he was on a mission at the border, what exactly happened to him was still a mystery. The psychiatrist rubbed his temples. This was a huge matter and he had to report it to General Qin. This meant that he had to let boss bring people to complete the mission. As the night passed, it began to rain outside the courtyard. Qin Imo strolled around looking elegant and refined. Soon, someone walked over raising a black umbrella. In the future, ask them to wait for young Master Jiao to fall asleep, Qin Imo replied indifferently. That person nodded and didn't say much. The young master's trip was basically filled with chills. He didn't know what had happened. Qin Imo didn't say anything else. From the conversation just now, the only thing Qin Imo was sure of was that the doctor was lying, and he was lying about his situation. Chapter 1077. The next morning, Bojiu left early. This time she walked out of the main gate, using the excuse of walking the cat as an excuse to bring Princess along. Before she left, the old men who were out for a stroll greeted her. Little friend, you're here again. You didn't climb over the wall this time. You did well the last time. He must be going back to get punished. Where are you going so early in the morning? Bojiu experienced the enthusiasm of the old men in the courtyard. All of them were tough but still like old children. I'm going out with Princess. Bojiu found a good excuse. She pulled down her jacket, revealing Princess's huge cat face. He was valiant and full of vigor and seriousness. Those who didn't know better would think that they were going to do something big. The old men at the side teased. Does your brother know that you're walking the cat outside the courtyard? Everyone thought he was Qinchu's little brother. Bojiu replied calmly, I know. She was happy that she finally didn't have to sneak out. At this moment, in the study room of the Qin family's house, the person who always followed Qin Imo appeared. Young master, don't you need to follow young Master Jiao anymore? I don't need it here. Qin Imo used the knife and fork to cut the omelet in front of him, his voice calm. She doesn't like to be restrained. Give her some freedom and she will know what she wants to do next. There was a double meaning in his words. The man glanced sideways at the book in his young master's hand. Sun Tzu's Art of War, retreat in order to advance. This was a good move. Bojiu was more relaxed now. After alighting from the taxi, she let Princess lie on her shoulder, letting him fend for himself. As a purebred cat that rarely left the military courtyard, Princess felt that such an outing was an insult to his bloodline. However, seeing that this strange kid had fed dried fish, it reluctantly looked at him for a while longer. Coco and Feng Shang hadn't expected Bojiu to bring a cat. One wave of teasing and another wave of teasing. In the end there was music. Princess wore a huge pancake face, watching the few humans jumping around in front of him. He patted the big fellow that always made sounds. During lunch it was finally quieter. The strange kid treated it well. After feeding it some dried fish, he picked up a lunch box and started eating. Are humans so poor now? Eating boxed meals? The four of them did eat boxed lunches. The place he brought the princess to was also a studio for practicing Korean dance. People like us, can we form a group and officially debut? Coco said as he ate. He didn't forget to look at himself in the mirror. The more I look, the more handsome I look. I'm not going to look anymore. I'm afraid I'll lose myself in my own handsomeness. Feng Shang didn't say a word and hit the back of his head. Wake up. The two of them didn't use their mouths or their fists, they were just fooling around. Finally, he quietened down and glanced at Lin Feng, who was still trying to find his tone. Coco leaned against the huge mirror, his voice low. Is Supreme Alliance really going to be like this in the future? Feng Shang didn't say anything because he knew too well that all good things must come to an end. Some things couldn't be achieved just because you wanted them to. We're still here. Feng Shang's bad habit hadn't changed. Wait for everyone to come back. Coco slapped his long legs. You're right, I'm rich anyway. We'll wait here for them to come back. Both of them knew he was just comforting himself. Yun, who was overseas, and Lin Feng was going to start a company in the future. Their captain was gone. How could they go back just like that? Everyone probably understood this point, which was why they were especially serious during practice. 5 p.m. The four of them had officially graduated. From the rhythm to the repetitive movements and the proficiency with the lyrics, they were no longer the people of the past. Are you ready? Bojiu asked the three beside her. Lin Feng pointed at his eyes. Do I have to wear eyeliner? Stage makeup. Bojiu smiled devilishly. The lighting is dim, we'll take the car over. It'll start at 6 p.m. Coco tugged at his shirt. Am I too cute? Aren't you the type? Bojiu glanced at the lit-up phone screen. It's Feng. The other three immediately shut their mouths, glancing up at themselves in the mirror. Hello. Bojiu stood up. Is the venue ready? All right, we're ready too, let's go. After hanging up the phone, the other three stood up together. Just then Feng Yi said, "From my perspective, it isn't high enough, it's lacking a highlight." "Think about it, what highlight is there?" Bo Jiu turned on the hands-free mode, allowing everyone to hear his words. Lin Feng fiddled with his hair. "As long as I don't have to wear female clothes, I can find any highlight." However, Lin Feng didn't expect the youngster to laugh lightly. The young man chuckled and added, "I'll wear it." 2 words. Lin Feng almost tilted his head. He must be dreaming. Was this kid crazy? He must have lost sleep for the past 2 nights, causing his hearing to be impaired. Voluntarily wearing female clothes, what was going on? "Let me tell you, little spade, don't take a step back in order to advance. Don't think that if you sacrifice yourself, I'll sacrifice myself with you. I refuse to cross-dress in this life," Lin Feng said majestically. Coco and Feng Shang, who were standing at the side, finally managed to shut their mouths. After all, they were innocent people, unlike Lin Feng who had so many twists and turns. Now there was only one thing left in their minds, and that was Spade Z Idol was going to cross-dress. As the person in question, Bo Jiu didn't change much. She stuffed one hand into her pocket and used the other to pull Princess back into her arms. She smiled faintly as she walked out of the mirror. She had said that since she was going to leave, she had to leave openly. The other 3 glanced at each other, feeling as though the world was a little fantastical. The 4 of them stood tall, wearing the same uniform. When they walked out, they immediately attracted the attention of the crowd. Bo Jiu was still wearing a mask. Just as she was about to enter the nanny van, a figure flashed past. It was probably because they were near the subway and there were many small vendors around. That person looked very familiar. Bo Jiu stopped and glanced over. "Little Spade, what are you looking at? Let's go." Coco patted Bo Jiu's shoulder. "Get in the car first, I'm going to buy something." A clear voice came through the mask, sounding a little nasal. Coco didn't have anything else to say. He put on his earphones and started revising the lyrics. Bo Jiu walked towards the slightly hunched figure. The person hadn't seen her yet. Her hair was slightly white and there was a wooden drawer-like thing hanging in front of her. That was something all the vendors would come into contact with. There wasn't anything special on it, just a few cartons of cigarettes and a few bottles of mineral water. It was a pain to sell like this. Under the bright sun they had to walk back and forth. If someone saw them and needed cigarettes and water, they would buy 1 or 2 boxes. It was convenient for people who had just left the subway. "Your change." The person lowered her head, a smile on her face. She was in her 50s and the bracelet on her hand seemed to have been sold. There were only some things that Bo Jiu couldn't identify. The person lifted her head. Her eyes lit up when she recognized Bo Jiu, but she couldn't call out her name. She asked in surprise, "Child, why are you here?" If it hadn't been for this person, her daughter wouldn't have won the lawsuit. Hence, even though Bo Jiu was wearing a mask, she could still recognize the youngster. Bo Jiu was carrying a cat in her arms. Her eyes were on the boxes of cigarettes. She took out her wallet, wanting to buy some. The person reached out to stop her. "No, I'm not selling these to you. How old are you to smoke?" She changed her direction and passed Bo Jiu a bottle of mineral water. "The weather is so hot, drink some water." Bo Jiu took it but didn't open it. When she opened her mouth, her throat moved. "I remember your daughter has some royalties." "Oh, about that." The man grabbed his clothes as if it was difficult for him to speak. In the end he said, "You see, those children are following me around working hard. I also have to spend money to fight the company. These few times, I also have to find people to prove the evidence. In the end it's my own problem. I don't want others to say that I did it for money. That's why I insisted on holding on to this matter. Things are as they are, so." Bo Jiu interrupted her. "I understand, Auntie." The person smiled, wiping the sweat off her forehead. "In the end I still have to thank you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know what to do. You should know that I can't read a single word." MMH. Bo Jiu reached out to hold the mineral water bottle. "Is your friend calling you?" The person pointed at Coco and the others. "Hurry up and go. You seem to have taken good care of yourself, don't tan your hands." Bo Jiu looked at her face. "Jiu, remember you have to always speak up for the weak. The weak aren't those who say they are pitiful and cry in front of others after hurting others. The real weak aren't those who can't seek justice after being hurt." Bo Jiu stood there, the sunlight piercing her eyes. She understood. It had been so many days. From the county to the provincial capital, and then from the provincial capital to Jianghu City. She had fought 3 lawsuits and every one of them had dragged on. How much money and effort had she expended? How many of them didn't sleep and wished that they could die immediately to calm themselves down? Then they would have to face a bunch of questions the next day. No one would care. In China there was a strange phenomenon. If a person wanted justice, there would always be a heart-wrenching explanation. This person must have done it for money. Why was she so troublesome? Everything was over. Could she get over it? In their eyes, one sentence was the end of the matter. But it was the last straw that crushed their hearts. Even until now there were still people who didn't mind stealing. No one would care. They didn't care about the lives of the people they had hurt. The truly weak would never make a sound. Because they wanted to seek justice in a dignified manner. Hence, even if they won the lawsuit, the mother would only ask for $1 of compensation. Because she knew that if she asked for more, people would say she did it for money. No matter how the public opinion changed. In the end, the other party would be clean. But in this industry, there were many people who copied the original work and used it to become popular. Then they would turn around and accuse the original work. After being discovered, they would pretend that nothing had happened. Anyway, there were people who supported them. But the people who were really hurt had to have no desires. Wasn't it right to take back what was taken from them? Wasn't it right for them to seek justice for their loved ones who were taken from them? If they had to talk about compensation, how much compensation would it take to return to a mother and a daughter? But it was these people who made every piece of justice that should have come too late. Bo Jio watched as the slightly bowed figure walked further and further away. Her hand holding the water bottle was a little numb. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about reuniting with the Almighty. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about staying in Jianghu City. But at this moment, these thoughts were burned by the sunlight. She wanted to be Z. Return to where she should be. Do what she had to do. Swoosh. The car door was pulled shut. It interrupted her thoughts. Bo Jio sat in the front passenger seat and sent a message. Hoshino received it. It was a simple message, but it indicated her return. When Hoshino saw the message, he stopped playing the game. Because he knew. From today onwards, Z would be Z. She wouldn't be involved with young Master Fu anymore. Everything would return to normal. Bo Jio hid it so well that the people in the car didn't notice anything unusual. Or perhaps, everyone was focused on their own tasks. Besides, Bo Jio had been wearing her earphones ever since she boarded the car. It seemed like she was listening to music. Hence, no one paid attention to her. The nanny car followed the flow of traffic towards a technical school. Why did they choose this place for the farewell party? It was because there was an additional major in this technical school. Esports. In the future, Supreme Alliance's power would probably be chosen from here. The location was chosen by Feng Yi. Since it was a farewell party, it should be done with a bang. After all, Supreme Alliance had never been a team that kept a low profile. The situation had changed drastically in an instant. This was a gathering place for schools. Other than this technical school, there were number 1 middle school and number 2 middle school nearby. Those who studied this major were high schoolers. Everything had the authentic atmosphere of a school. It was a little like the welcoming party for new students at the start of school. The equipment was set up on the grass. There was a rack and a sound system. There were professionals doing sound tests. There were also many balloons hanging on the ground and a long buffet table filled with food. Every member's fan club president was arranging for them to enter. It was a spectacular scene. When some students passed by, their eyes were filled with envy. There was a metal fence. It was originally a place for people to play football, but now it was set up like this. Everyone wanted to watch it for a while. Who is coming? An event organized by a celebrity? They chose a technical school to organize it? That's impossible, right? I don't think so. I heard there are esports players coming. Chapter 1078. Strangely, the fans were all here. For members from Supreme Alliance weren't here. Many of them were looking for Spade Z but couldn't find her. Are we late? It can't be anything. There should be a traffic jam, let's wait. After all, it was different from the previous masquerade. This time, everyone didn't dress up exaggeratedly. It was just like a grand evening party in a school. But Feng Yi had replaced the host. As usual, he was dressed in a suit and looked like a smiling prince. He held the microphone in his hand and said, "There will be a special opening today." Just as he said this sentence, in the darkened area, all the lights lit up, shining on the corresponding balloons, adding an indescribable warmth. As for the opening, Feng Yi looked at the fans in front of him, then at Yunhu and Qin Mo, his lips curving into a smile. Let's give the stage to the 4 members who aren't here yet. What did he mean? It wasn't just the fans who weren't sure what was going on. Even Yunhu and Uncle Ian, who were in the same team, couldn't understand. Qin Mo stood in the middle, his bandaged hand in his trouser pocket, the other hand swirling the wine glass. When he heard Feng Yi's words, a glint flashed across his eyes, and he lifted his lids slightly to look up at Feng Yi. In that instant, all the surrounding lights were extinguished. Only the shattered stars were left in the middle of the stage. Swoosh! A beam of light fell, shining on the black piano. She saw a young man sitting there quietly. The young man's slender fingers were placed on the piano, and his handsome side profile exuded softness under the light. It was obvious that the youngster was dressed differently today, otherwise she wouldn't have a belt around her waist and a headset. But at this moment, no one would pay attention to the youngster's attire. Because the next second, the melodious sound of the piano rang out. It was very light, making it easy for people to hum along. It was obvious that the music had been rearranged. Just when many people felt that the theme was very familiar, the sound of the piano rang out. The youngster stood up suddenly, taking large strides towards the center. Her silver fringe was pulled back by her hair, revealing her beautiful forehead. The sound of the music changed. It was the same theme, but at this moment, it was bright and cheerful. It was also at that moment that the other three people walked up from the left and right sides. Each of them was wearing the same combat uniform and had a black earpiece on their left ear. Even their wrists were tied with the same black silk scarf. All of them gathered together, and the scene was so handsome that it was a little out of control. As they appeared, everyone held their breath. What are they doing? Before anyone could finish their words, Feng Shang opened his mouth. His voice was clear as he danced, giving people a sense of obedience. At such a young age, I still don't know what love is, but I was defeated by your sweet smile. Most importantly, the others did the same thing. At this moment, Coco and Feng Shang would switch their positions, continuing to sing. Every day after class, different timbre but equally pleasant to the ears. In addition, the four of them were singing and dancing at the same time. Chapter 1079. The expression on every single fan's face changed. Even the students who were sitting by the railing stood up at this moment. Some fans were so agitated that they didn't know what to do. They reached out to hold on to the people beside them. Some pulled out their phones. Most of them covered their mouths as they pressed the recording button. The stars shone brightly. Besides the black scarf, Bojio had something else on her wrist. Everyone had a glowing black wristband. As they danced, they looked even more handsome. Every single person who stuttered wouldn't stutter when they sang. This was probably common sense. Feng Shang's voice was completely unleashed at this moment. Even the fact that Lin Feng was out of tune wasn't a problem anymore. Because during the chorus, the four of them moved in unison. Bojio's voice appeared at this moment. I just want to give you my love. I still don't know if this is considered love. I want to share my happiness with you. I want to give you a shoulder when I'm sad. This is the first time I'm nervous for someone. They had rearranged the dance. Hence, when Bojio sang this sentence, she tilted her head and paused. She tilted her body slightly, a mischievous smile on her lips. Her silver hair fell down as she formed the shape of a heart with both of her hands. Then she formed the shape of a 1. When Chinemo saw this scene, his hand that was swirling the wine glass froze. Feng Yi stood at the side, his head aching slightly. Couldn't they have given a heads up about such deliberate actions? Was Little Spade afraid that no one would know about the CP issue? Fortunately, the pause wasn't long. They were dancing after all. After Bojio finished singing, she retreated to the left. Lin Feng stood at the front. He formed the same heart shape, but his style was different from Bojio's. His handsome face was the best plus. His voice was accompanied by the harmony at the side. Many people couldn't help but sing along. They raised their hands and swayed their bodies lightly. The atmosphere was extremely high. I really want to give you my love. It's only been a few weeks. My mood is bad because you aren't around. A ray of warm light shines down. I can't help but look forward to it. Because of love. With the end of the last sentence, countless colorful balloons floated out from the stage. Only 4 people were left on the stage. Their chests rose and fell slightly, and they couldn't speak for the time being. Because they had just finished dancing, even their hair seemed lighter than usual, but they were smiling brightly. Bojio's devilish aura hadn't changed much. But compared to her devilish aura, after singing such an adorable song, she bent over and placed Princess on her shoulder, looking even cooler and more handsome. Sweat slid down the young man's forehead and landed on his chin. His silver hair was already a little wet from dancing, but it didn't affect him much. Instead, it added a sense of unruliness to him. The 4 of them looked at each other and said, "I'll give you the best love." Then they bowed in unison. At that moment, the screams were uncontrollable. Some people even felt that it was a pity that the 4 of them didn't become stars. They were all fair and clean, but each had their own merits. How does it feel to listen to your favorite esports god sing the live version of the handsome dance? It was mainly a heart gesture. Even if the heart wasn't for them, it was enough for everyone to cheer for a while. The passionate atmosphere couldn't be calmed down. Even Yun, who was in disbelief. After all, he was aware of Lin Feng's singing skills. But when he saw that person's side profile was covered in a thin layer of sweat, he smiled brightly, revealing his beautiful teeth as he walked towards him. Once again, Yun, who felt his heart beating wildly, even his blood vessels were getting heated. The repeated tremors made him unable to control himself. He reached out and grabbed Lin Feng's wrist. The moment Lin Feng came down from the stage, he hadn't even stabilized his breathing when he was dragged backstage by Yun. The so-called backstage was just a temporary place. But even if it was temporary, there was a door and a small changing room. Before Lin Feng could react, he was already pressed against the wall. "Are you an idiot?" Yunhu's voice sounded extremely deep. "What the hell?" Lin Feng was about to explode again. He admitted that his singing wasn't good, but he didn't have to be an idiot, right? "Dressed like this," Yunhu continued. "And singing such a song." Lin Feng glared. "Wait a minute, what's wrong with what I'm wearing? Why do I look like I'm naked when I'm with you?" *CK move aside. Yunhu didn't move. Lin Feng reached out to push him. But his hand was pulled back, followed by a turn and a kiss. No one could escape from such a kiss. It was as though he wanted to tear him apart and devour him. His thin lips were pried open and he moved around inside, sucking heavily. A numbing sensation assaulted him. Since it was an enclosed environment, they could even hear the sound of kissing. Lin Feng even forgot to make a move. Anyone who was treated in such a way would have their mind go blank. His head was buzzing and his thoughts were all in a mess. There was also an abnormal breathing sound. Yunhu was the one who ended the kiss. He seemed to have regained his rationality, forcefully pulling himself away from the sweet taste. He leaned his head against Lin Feng's left shoulder, his voice hoarse. "I like you so much that I'm about to explode. So this is the last time. Treat it as a gift to send me off. It's really the last time." Lin Feng's eyes widened. Lin Feng didn't speak, his face blank. Only his slightly red lips showed his current state. Yunhu straightened his back. The two of them fell into silence. It was probably because of what happened the previous time. It still didn't pass. Hence, even now they didn't know how to break the news. The youngster, who had been watching from start to end, noticed that the two of them weren't moving and the atmosphere seemed to be frozen. She had originally intended to guard the door, but when she glanced down at her watch, it was about time. She reached out and knocked on the wooden door of the fitting room, even though she was already inside. Lin Feng and Yunhu paused, turning towards the source of the sound. They didn't know if they should heave a sigh of relief or be annoyed. Why was little Spade beside them? Bo Jio expressed that she wasn't going to take the blame. They had discussed beforehand that she would be wearing female clothing today. The moment Lin Feng met the youngster's gaze, he seemed to have thought of something. He opened his mouth, about to speak. Bo Jio was still hugging Princess, leaning against the wall, a faint smile on her face. "Rather than the fitting room, you can find a car. After all, there isn't a third wheel in the car." Cough. Lin Feng decided not to speak. With the current situation, there was no way he could clear his name. Yunhu stuffed a hand into his pocket, his voice calm. "It isn't what you think, we are just fooling around." "Who would be fooling around with kissing?" Bo Jio arched a brow. Yunhu walked over, leaving behind only one sentence. "You straight?" Bo Jio didn't reply since she felt that the atmosphere between them wasn't the same as before. After Lin Feng heard Yunhu's explanation, he smiled. "Yes, we are just fooling around." His voice was obviously much lower. Bo Jio didn't have time to ask. Lin Feng spoke again. "Which set of female clothing are you going to wear?" He was changing the topic. Bo Jio understood. She glanced back and forth between the two of them, feeling that something was wrong between them. When Yunhu heard this, he paused in his tracks as though there was something wrong with his ears. "You're going to cross-dress?" I am." Bo Jio walked over, twisting open a part that was covered. It was a pure black long dress that hung down, reaching her ankles. For some reason, Lin Feng felt that the dress looked a little familiar. But he didn't have time to think. Yunhu asked, "Does Captain know about your cross-dressing?" "No." Bo Jio smiled. "If I don't wear it, Senior Lin will have to." Was that the logic? When did he say that? Yunhu was still frowning. Lin Feng was already resisting. "Don't even think about making me wear female clothing again. That's why I will wear it." Bo Jio lifted the dress, her movements swift. Even if you are leaving, you have to be handsome, don't you think so? Lin Feng didn't understand why the definition of handsomeness was defined by cross-dressing. But that didn't stop him from supporting Little Spade's decision. He hadn't seen Little Spade in female clothing the previous time. This time he had to see what Little Spade looked like. Alright, I'm going to change. If Almighty Yun wants to continue with Senior Lin, you can find another place. Bojio smiled. Her words successfully made Lin Feng flush. Yun, who could only remain silent. They walked out of the changing room together. Coco ran over. When he saw the two of them, he arched a brow at Lin Feng. What's wrong with your mouth? Mouth? Lin Feng seemed to have realized something. He changed his lines. It should be the hot pot in the afternoon and the spicy pot in the afterlife. Coco hugged his rabbit, muttering, it wasn't that fresh during the dance. Does the chili have a delayed reaction? Lin Feng couldn't let him continue thinking. What are you doing here? I'm looking for Little Spade. Is he wearing female clothing? I told the fans that we are going to have a big move later. Coco couldn't hide the excitement in his voice. Lin Feng wiped the sweat off his forehead. He finally managed to divert his attention. Little Spade has already changed. He locked the door from the inside and asked us to wait outside. That's good. What do you think Captain's expression will be when he sees Little Spade in female clothing? Aha, I really want to see it. Yun, who turned and glanced at the tightly shut door. He didn't tell the two simple-minded fellows that their captain had seen Little Spade in female attire. But this time, Captain didn't seem to know about it. Chapter 1080. In the fitting room, the youngster bent over and took off her t-shirt. The reflection in the mirror was the white bandage wrapped around her chest. Since it was covered, the Z logo wasn't visible. But it was obvious that after the bandage was removed, her perky curves could be seen. Her elegant neck matched with her beautiful white collarbone, which slowly blossomed, giving off a kind of enchanting bewitchment. Bojio glanced sideways at the collagen Lin Feng had provided. She smiled and threw it into the bag. Her left hand moved and she turned to buckle something behind her back. All he could see was a vast expanse of white. Once the long dress was on, Bojio glanced up at the mirror. She placed the long curly hair on her head and used a black clip to secure it. The energetic pretty youngster instantly turned into a cold young lady with the demeanor of a queen. Bojio held a silver electronic lighter in her hand. She lit a cigarette and took 2 puffs. Then she remembered that the Almighty had mentioned quitting smoking. She extinguished the cigarette lazily. She glanced at herself in the mirror. Dressing up was a piece of cake for her. She didn't need much makeup. She just needed a mascara to lift her eyelashes and a bright red lipstick. She glanced at the person in the mirror. She had the typical vibe of a witch. Princess frowned as he watched from the side. He looked at Bojio cautiously. Meow, who could tell him what this strange youngster was up to today? Bojio reached out and picked it up, hugging it in her arms. She wore a black dress that reached her ankles and carried a snow-white cat in her arms. Bojio looked more like a bloodling girl from a manga. Outside the fitting room. After the dance, the other 3 had already picked up their glasses and started to drink. Even Lin Feng, who had disappeared to God knows where, lowered his head to avoid some people's gazes. The only one who didn't appear was Big Spade. The fans weren't the only ones looking for him. Chinamo sat there with his long legs crossed. He tapped the wine glass with his fingers and looked at Coco. Where is she? Coco was still imagining his captain's reaction when he saw Little Spade in female clothing. He didn't expect his captain to suddenly ask him, so he was a little confused. Ever since you got off the stage, you haven't been eating or drinking. You've been staring at me. What are you looking at? Coco shuddered at the question. How could he forget that his captain had always been good at reading people's minds? What are you hiding from me? Chinamo swirled his wine glass and took a sip. When he glanced over, his gaze was faint. Coco couldn't resist the pressure and was about to tell the truth. An uproar could be heard from the crowd on the left. Here it comes. Coco's eyes lit up. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the voice. Lin Feng was also watching. He was watching from a close distance because the person who had caused the commotion was already in front of him. At this moment, when Lin Feng saw the figure with fluttering long hair, he looked like he was about to collapse. He couldn't help but say, F***CK, why is it this person again? Captain will probably be acting weird again. If Captain lets Little Spade down again, it won't be right. Even though Lin Feng's memory wasn't good, he could still recognize this person. Chapter 1081. It had to be said that Lin Feng's gaze was hostile and it was very obvious. Furthermore, he had said those words. Yun, who stood at the side. He raised his right hand and held his forehead gently. He had thought that this fellow would go offline occasionally. But he hadn't expected him to go offline so badly. How many times had it been? But he still couldn't tell anything. In fact, Lin Feng did find the girl familiar, but he had never associated her with Spade. After all, the current Bo Jio was clearly different from her short-haired self. When her fair fingers were placed on the cat's head, her silky black hair was scattered on both sides, and her porcelain-like shoulders were slightly exposed. Her makeup was extremely beautiful, which was why the person standing in front of her looked like a noble from a castle when she smiled. Bo Jio heard Lin Feng's words. She had come to look for them. She smiled. From what you said, you seem to hate me. As long as you can tell. Lin Feng had a stubborn personality. He stuffed a hand into his pocket, looking arrogant as though he couldn't stand the sight of her. Bo Jio arched a brow, a playful look in her eyes as she took a step forward. Lin Feng called out, "Don't come over, don't you know it's improper for men and women to touch each other?" Bo Jio stilled, but in that instant she lowered her body, still carrying Princess. She bent down, her side profile stunning, especially the faint smile on her face. "Senior Lin, if you continue to hide, I'm going to tell Coco and the rest about your kiss with Almighty Yun." Lin Feng stilled. Lin Feng was stunned for a moment. Then his eyes widened. His clear eyes were filled with disbelief. How did it feel to be struck by lightning? How did it feel to be struck by lightning? That was how he felt right now. Lin Feng's mouth seemed to be stuttering, he couldn't even speak properly. "Xiao Xiao." After stuttering for a long while, he said like a man, "F*ck. Why is it you? This isn't logical. F*ck. Lin Feng's 3 consecutive curses were enough to explain his current mood. He could never have imagined that the girl he had always mentioned in front of Little Spade, the girl whom he suspected Captain liked, would be Little Spade herself. This wave was really awkward. Bo Jio straightened, the smile still on her face. Many people looked over. It was probably because of Lin Feng's reaction. Everyone was curious about who the girl was. Why was she hugging the cat that Big Spade had been hugging? Until the man tilted his head, revealing the black diamond earring. Only then did some of the fans stop what they were doing. They didn't dare to think further. However, the air around them seemed to have frozen. Everyone covered their mouths. With such a huge commotion, Chinamo would definitely look over. In the crowd, that person was wearing a long black dress. Her fingers were stroking the princess's head. Her eyes were black and beautiful. It was as if all the lights in the surroundings were reflected in her eyes. That person looked up uneasily. The 2 men's eyes met. Bo Jio smiled faintly, her long hair flowing down, the mole at the corner of her eyes glistening. At that moment, there was only one sentence in Qin Mo's mind. Chapter 1082. What are you looking at? Inwia was the last to arrive. His middle-aged man attire seemed out of place. He had a cigarette in his mouth as he followed Qin Mo's line of sight. It was rare to see Qin Mo like this. She hadn't expected to see a familiar face. The cigarette in her mouth loosened. She turned back to look at Qin Mo, only to see that his eyes were as deep as the waves of the sea, bottomless. Princess leaped down from her arms, circling towards Qin Mo. Qin Mo sat there, holding the white cat up. When he turned towards Bo Jio, he said in a deep voice, "Come here." Bo Jio smiled. She had to admit that the Almighty's expression had pleased her. She finally understood why the Almighty liked to see others shocked. Seeing his little secretary being shocked was also a very satisfying thing. Bo Jio lifted her legs and walked over. Qin Mo stood up, lifting his black jacket and covering her head. Before she could react, Qin Mo stood up. She was forcefully pulled into someone's embrace. The next moment, the familiar scent of mint and tobacco entered her nose. It seeped in. The back of her neck was cupped, gently kneading and pressing. Her thin lips touched a slight coldness. Bo Jio stilled. It wasn't just Bo Jio. Everyone in the surroundings froze. Feng Yi only had one reaction. How was he going to answer to the media and fans? How dare Qin Mo kiss her in such an occasion? No one had expected Qin Mo to kiss her in such a manner. Even though he had covered her, everyone present knew what he was doing. His left hand was still wrapped in a white bandage. His handsome face was tilted. When he kissed her, the curve of his chin was stretched. His handsome posture made everyone's hearts race. The fans present had never imagined that there would be a day when their hearts would race when they saw someone kissing. But that was it. Their hearts were about to jump out of their chests when they saw the scene. It wasn't a kiss that could be easily moved away. Instead, he acted as if there was no one else around and announced in a domineering manner. It was as though he was using this method to tell everyone that the person in his arms was his. the moment their lips touched. Bojio hadn't expected it. After he ended the kiss, he looked at her. His ears were filled with chaotic screams and gasps of disbelief. Bojio reached out and held herself down. Her breathing was unstable, but she still looked devilish. She leaned over and kissed him again. The situation was somewhat out of control. After all, some fans couldn't accept it. Qin Mo knew there would be people who couldn't accept it. But he didn't need to care who he was with and who he kissed. Some of Spade Z's fans had already recognized her as their Spade Z. After all, some of them had already known the secret of Big Spade being a girl during the competition. However, when he saw it with his own eyes, his heart was still very different. The person who waved the mouse single-handedly completed countless first kills and showed off the entire audience. It really was a girl. And such a beautiful girl at that. And she and Almighty Qin were real. Perhaps it had always been true. Those interactions on Weibo, those ambiguous clues. She could still remember the pink flush that rose from the bottom of her heart when the bed photo incident happened. It wasn't their imagination. It could even be said that their imagination wasn't even a tenth of the two of them. When Spade Z's fans looked at Bojio, they smiled sincerely. But there were other fans. Some didn't think Bojio was a girl. They didn't recognize the person that Almighty Qin had kissed in public. When they realized that it might be Spade Z, everyone had a different expression. What exactly was going on? Were the two of them really gay? What was with Spade Z cross-dressing? It wasn't easy to control. Feng Yi had to step up as his manager. This was probably Supreme Alliance's style. He thought of many reasons to appease the fans, but he didn't fabricate any of them. Instead, he explained clearly, Big Spade gave everyone a surprise. He used cross-dressing to bid farewell to everyone. As for the relationship between the team members, it is as you can see. At this moment, he didn't seem to care about what the fans really wanted. Actually, it was clear that if they were just a couple, they might be cute. But if you were really gay, they might not continue to be cute. But no matter what, this was Supreme Alliance. The Supreme Alliance that had many problems. How did it feel to have a heart that was about to explode? It was so sweet that it was like honey. For the fans who liked this pair, it was simply sugar among sugar. To the other fans, they would rather not have attended this farewell party. Of course, most of them liked it. Because all the presidents of the fan club only said one sentence to those people. This is a farewell party, we might never see Supreme Alliance with such a lineup again. When they heard this sentence, the other group of fans quietened down. They lifted their eyes and looked over in the direction of the voice. The clothes they were wearing weren't uniform. It wasn't like when they were playing games, where they would look at the same uniform and feel their blood boil. There was Shui Yao Yao, Coco, Feng Shang, Yin Weiyao, Lin Feng, Yunhu, Spade Z, Almighty Qin. After today, Supreme Alliance would be 3 people short. The Feng Yun CP was about to break up. Almighty Qin's hand was badly injured and he might not be able to play games anymore. They seemed to have forgotten. What was their initial intention when they fell in love with these people? They wanted to see them play another game, even if it was just one game. There would always be that person in countless nights in your life, telling you that in this world, there were things that could be obtained with hard work. That person was Shui Yao Yao, who they had watched grow up. That person was Almighty Qin, who had turned the tide with his own strength. That person was the youngster who stood in front of the huge screen, his head slightly drooping because he had lost a game. No matter who they were with, it seemed to be their freedom. Especially when the two of them stood together, not afraid of anyone's gaze, their foreheads touching, a light smile at the corner of their lips. Some of the fans were relieved. They had never seen Almighty Qin smile like this, so gentle that it could melt all the ice and snow. He was simply looking at someone. Scorching, deep, and doting, all of it finally turned into him pulling that person into his arms. With a faint smile he said, "Little hooligan." Bojio. Who kissed first. This was probably how love should be. It had nothing to do with gender.